Okay, today we're going to be looking at the fundamental political principles of our American government. This is kind of like the overall rules that both people and government have to follow. Right? So we're looking at how these principles define and shape our U.S. government. And as we said, we can think of these as like the basic rules of the game. All right? And there are 5 key rules that we're going to be looking at. And these 5 key rules, overall, they define and shape American constitutional government. And that can go near the top of your notes. All right, these are the 5 key principles. And some of these terms you might know, and some will help define today as we go through. But in general, you can think of these things as things that we can do as citizens in our government, and also things that we limit and we stop the government from doing. So things the government can't do. All right, so these first kind of first 3 things are all about the cans, the things that, yes, you can do this. So first off, we have a democracy. And the idea in a democracy is that the people rule. Right? So, it's not a monarchy. It's not a dictatorship. There's not one person or one family in charge, right? The people are in charge of our government. And how do we rule? Right? We mainly rule through voting, right? Which is interesting because in a lot of elections, fewer than half of the people who could vote turn out to vote. So it's an important right, but if we don't exercise it, then we don't have as much power as we could. All right, we also rule by communicating. You can sign petitions, you can email, you can call your congressman, your city councilor, you can go to school board meetings, you can speak out at city council. These are all ways that you help influence our government. All right, but this doesn't mean that we sit around and we all individually vote on every issue. Right? That would be nearly impossible. Even just in the city of Charlottesville, if we had 40,000 people all expressing their opinions all the time, it'd be hard for any of us to get things done. So we basically elect people to go off and run the government for us. Right? Their job is to represent us and to work for us. And that leads to the second idea, and that's representative government. Right? So we elect people to represent, and make laws and run the country, the city, the state on our behalf. All right, so the third one here is going to use the word consent. All right, it's going to be consent of the governed is the third idea. And consent basically means to give permission. And when it says governed, that's kind of a new word, right? That basically means us, the people who are being ruled by the government. So it's basically the consent of all of us. And like we said in the preamble, right, that starts right with the first 3 words of the Constitution. We the people. We're the source. We give the power to the Constitution. So we give permission for government to run the country. All right, so as we're heading into kind of the second half here, those are the 3 things we can do. And now we're going to look at, again, how these things have defined and shaped our constitutional government. And now we're looking at a couple ways we control the government by saying what they can't do. All right, so these are things the government can't do. So the first idea is that the government is limited. Right? There are restrictions on what they can do. Right? Government is not all powerful. Right? Congress, the president, the governor, city council, they can only do things that they have been given the power to do. A great example of this is all of the things in the Bill of Rights. We've talked about the First Amendment and the freedom of speech and religion and press and assemble. Well, the first word in that is Congress. Right? So Congress shall pass no law limiting freedom of speech or of the press. Right? It's basically telling the government what they can't do. Right? So the government can't trample our rights. Right? We don't give our permission to do that. So we have these freedoms because they've always been there. The government can't take that away. All right. And the fifth and final one also affects the government. It's the idea of the rule of law. That even if you're in government, you still have to follow the law, right? Nobody's above the law. Whether you're, a top official or a mayor or a school board member, you can be arrested and charged with crimes just like any other citizen. And you can be put on trial if you're breaking the law, right? So that even if you're in the government, you still have to follow the law, right? The law is the highest thing. The Constitution is the top of our government, not the president, not Congress, not the Supreme Court, right? The Constitution and the law is the highest thing. All right, so hopefully that gives you a better understanding of these 5 key things as we look to our fundamental political principles that shape our government. All right, thanks for listening.